Richard Feynman once said, "Never confuse education with intelligence. You can have a PhD and still be an idiot." What are some real life examples of this? My wife's stepfather was a chemist who currently has diabetes. One night he went to the ER because his blood sugar was dangerously high. He claimed he was eating well, he normally doesn't, so there's no reason why his blood sugar was high. In his car was a 2-liter bottle of ginger ale mixed in with grape juice. He said that the two canceled their sugars out, and we didn't know what we were talking about because he was a chemist and he knows how to combine things. With respect to sugar, unless you're doing a low sugar juice, you've got the same numbers as soda because he doesn't drink diet. But when I was hearing this, I'm just trying to imagine the taste. Ugh. This happened earlier this year and he still argues he's right. Like, dude, you add a vodka kicker to a margarita, does it suddenly cancel out the alcohol? Or is a Long Island iced tea no longer potent because you've canceled everything else out? Now, I'm no scientist, but I've added my sodas together when I was younger and I never had sudden regular tasting water. Story 2. I was at a keg party in college and the gravity keg was set up. Someone complained that the beer was not flowing, so I checked that the keg was still almost full. Turns out someone closed the air intake on top. I opened the intake and poured myself a beer. Problem solved. A few minutes later, someone else complains the beer is out. I told them the keg was full a few minutes ago and it was a tap problem that I fixed. They told me they just came from the keg, so I go back to the keg and find that the intake was closed again. Opened it and poured the young lady who said it was empty beer. As she is leaving, my suite mate comes in and goes to the intake and closes it. Now my suite mate is a straight-A student who gets all A's, mostly due to his photographic memory. Back to the keg, so I tell him that he needs to leave the intake open to let air in to displace the beer coming out of the lower tap. He then proceeds to tell me that since the beer is carbonated, air is not needed to replace the liquid volume lost when the beer is dispensed. So I asked him 2 questions. If it is not needed, why is there the upper tap? And does he really think the amount of gas the carbonation gives off in a glass of beer is equal to the volume of the liquid beer? He thought for a few seconds and his only response was, "I have a 4.0. What is your GPA?" Then he walked away. Okay, I hope this guy's response was, "Awesome, your GPA matches your IQ." Story 3. Psych nurse here. Got a fax on a patient at a local ER for possible psychiatric admission. Frequent flyers of ours in my unit. Her blood pressure was through the roof, she had facial drooping on one side, body paralysis on one side, and slurred speech. Anyone with a hint of healthcare knowledge will tell you that those are classic signs of an active stroke. So I called the ER thinking maybe they meant to send the fax to our medical unit and sent it to us by mistake. Nope. I said, "You do know she's having a stroke with those symptoms, right?" ER nurse proceeds to tell me that the ER doc thinks she is faking those symptoms because she has a significant psychiatric history. I said, "So you think she's faking a blood pressure of 280 over 165 and body paralysis?" She hung up on me. Our psychiatrist calls the ER back on speaker to find out what's going on. The ER doctor tells her patient is faking these symptoms because, and I quote, "schizophrenics cannot have strokes." Our psychiatrist asked him where he went to med school because, well, they owed him a refund. One full refund for this genius, please. Story 4. In a personal note, my wife was a PhD candidate when we moved in together. Early on, we went to a party, and when we got home, I told her I felt inadequate because I was the least educated person in every room, and I felt kinda dumb listening to them all go on about things I had no idea about. She said to me, they each know the most about some little thing they just got their PhD about, some gene mutation or how some molecule interacts in some rarefied environment. But apart from that, they're all just regular people who can't figure out how to match their socks or talk to a member of the opposite gender. She also said, "You're one of the most curious people I know. Your library is bigger and more diverse than anyone else I know, and you've actually read them. You ask questions and talk to everybody and have actual things to talk to them about because you know about things they're interested in." Now she's an MD, PhD, and all of our friends are doctors of one kind of another, and I'm still the least educated person at the party. But now I can see people are just people, and yes, you can be super smart about one thing or another and still be stuck up in the real world. It's way more important to be a good, kind person who does what you say you'll do than the smartest kid in class. At least that's how we raised our kids, anyway. Story 5. Here's a contrarian opinion. PhDs are your friends, not the enemy. Remember that Reddit can be like a detention class full of people seething with jealousy. Keep your eyes on inequality, corruption, fascism, secrecy, and elites behind it all. PhDs are not elite. Getting a PhD isn't easy. Here are the things you have to do. First, read thousands of pages over the course of a few years, where every other page presents a puzzle that takes several minutes to wrap your head around. Second, work occasional 30 to 50-hour shifts to meet deadlines. Third, work 20-plus hours on homework sets and sometimes 20-plus hours on single puzzling problems, failing dozens of times. And fourth, find your way through a minefield of narcissistic a-hole professors and jerk students while juggling a complex schedule, social demands, collaboration, homework, etc. The average dropout rate for military boot camps is 11 to 14%. For PhD programs, it's 20 to 25%. You can be brilliant with a high school degree, but a PhD is more likely, not guaranteed, but much more likely, to be doggedly persistent, more interested in the leading edge, a fast learner and reader, a good writer and teacher, and able to see simplicity underlying complexity. Again, keep your focus on corrupt elites. They'd love to distract you with anything else. So I have friends taking their PhD, and there's one thing that they keep saying, and I finally understand it. A lot of people who get their PhD become arrogant because of what they had to go through. But I hope things change because they say it's like most professors are out to get you to fail. Story 6. There are only 5 people in the world to have ever won 2 Nobel Prizes. One is a brilliant chemist, Linus Pauling, who won both the prize for chemistry and also the Peace Prize. Later in life, he became convinced with the benefits of megavitamin therapy, a theory which is totally lacking in efficacy evidence, which suggests taking excessive amounts of vitamin C prevents disease, including the common cold and cancer. Dr. Henry Heimlich, yes, that Heimlich, also created another life-saving method which also has probably saved thousands of lives. He developed the hardware for relieving pressure inside one's abdominal cavity that, should it increase, such as from a leaking lung, could prevent a lung from inflating. Remember the movie Three Kings, where a guy gets shot in the lung and they make a little gadget to release the pressure? Heimlich invented that. He invented his namesake maneuver because of studies of otherwise healthy people supposedly dying of heart attacks in restaurants all the time. For some reason, as recently as 1963, medical science wasn't acknowledging the high rate of people who just choked to death on their food and attributed their deaths to heart attack or other natural causes. That's how new the Heimlich maneuver is. And yet, late in life, he was a proponent of malaria therapy, the technique of infecting people who are sick with something else with malaria as the treatment. It works for syphilis because the malarial fever is hot enough to kill this syphilis bacteria. That was discovered in the 2000s. Heimlich proposed using it to treat cancer, Lyme, and later HIV and AIDS. He experimented on human patients with this technique. Story 7. I'm just going to generalize it. So many people will hear someone rattle off some smart-sounding facts or speak eloquently about that interesting thing they heard from Radiolab, and then just because the subject matter is associated in their minds with something that sounds nerdy academia adjacent, they say, "Wow, you're really smart." But what was really expressed by this person? What skill set did this person use to suddenly achieve smartness? Well, we heard a regurgitation of facts, a regurgitation of something someone else told them through their podcast app while they were driving to work. Is this intelligence? It may be true that this person is actually interested in topics that are typically associated with academia. It may be true that this person is more aware of these concepts than the average person. It may be true that this person can recite pi to 100 decimal places. But is any of this intelligence? No, so far they have only demonstrated a variety of memorized facts. You can do pretty well in your educational pursuits by merely being good at memorizing facts. You can do pretty well at various high-paying jobs by merely memorizing facts. But is this intelligence? Knowing more things than others can get you far in this society. But in terms of intellectual value, it's about as good as winning a trivia contest. You're just regurgitating memorized trivia that someone else gave to you. Seems a little trivial. So, what's the difference between this and intelligence? In my opinion, intelligence is using all of that knowledge to create something that provides value to someone. It's the synthesis of what you know, real world application, and invention. Intelligence is the discovery of new ways to apply things, ideas, or even feelings. To be clear, when I say new, I mean new to you. Plenty of intelligent people figure out and create new things or ideas that have already been discovered and never invent something truly new to society. But if they figured it out themselves without the undiscovered precursors that lead to the initial discovery, it's still something they were able to synthesize themselves. The novel societal value does not matter, it's still intelligence. My idea of intelligence has always been the degree to which you're capable of grasping new intuitive information, deduce patterns and connections, and apply all of your findings to different contexts. Does memory help? Yeah, it makes things easier to store and access information you draw upon when solving problems. Is memory the main trait pertaining to intelligence? Nah, I don't think so. As for your reasoning, I think your whole issue is people mistaking someone knowledgeable in something with intelligence. And this is precisely the point of this thread, as PhDs are essentially people who are extremely knowledgeable about a narrow area of knowledge in a specific field. You can discern someone knowledgeable from someone intelligent by taking them out of their element and seeing what's their reasoning when dealing with limited to no pre-existing information. But you do know what the most intelligent thing to do is right now at the moment, right? It's helping me out by hitting that like button and subscribing to the channel, so I can keep giving you more videos just like this. Pretty good segue, eh? Let's go ahead and get back to the stories. Story 8. Oh, I almost forgot about this one. When I was in my final year of physics at university, we had a professor who would get very irritated at the pull string for the projection screen as it would dangle down in front of the whiteboard. Every morning, he would spend a good couple of minutes attempting to throw the weight on the end over the light fixture above the whiteboard, taking anywhere from 5 to 30 tries each time. All the students would give tips and encouragement, and this became a kind of inside joke for the class of how long it would take every morning. Months go by, and one day near the end of the quarter, we end up with a substitute. The sub goes to the board and, without hesitation, grabs the string and hooks it over a thumbtack stuck in the cork at the top of the whiteboard. The entire class literally gasped in unison. The sub whirled around asking what happened, and the whole class just started laughing. Eventually, someone explained what happened, and we all had a good laugh that an entire class of physics majors never even thought of that solution, let alone noticed that the tack had always been there for that purpose. Story 9. One of my best friends, who is now a surgeon and one of the smartest people I have ever met. During his first year of med school, he was visiting his hometown during a break in the semester. We were at a restaurant, catching up. He ordered a milkshake for dessert that came with a maraschino cherry on top. He excitedly ate it, then said something to the effect of, "Man, I love maraschino cherries. I could eat 1,000,000 of these. I always wanted to buy a jar and eat it all to myself." To which I replied, "John, you're 24 years old. You own a house, have money in the bank, and are in med school. You're an adult. If you want to get yourself a jar of maraschino cherries, you can. We can hit up the store as soon as we're done here." He spent about 5 minutes struggling to process this newfound information. You could almost see the gears in his head turning, and after this brief delay, he looked at me with the biggest, almost childlike smile and said, "Let's go now." We paid our bill, then headed to the nearest grocery store. John then purchased the largest jar of maraschino cherries available and started eating. Afterwards, we went to a house party where John refused to drink, but instead just kept eating from his jar. Long story short, he ate the entire jar in about an hour, and 15 minutes later, he started puking neon red cherries for the rest of the evening. You can have the best education, could be a doctor and all that, and you can still find yourself having problems that even a kid could solve. Story 10. I'm seeing it now. I don't want this to sound like I'm disparaging a bunch of displaced people, but one of the people I know well is incredibly smart. When it comes to computer engineering, so far there is nothing he hasn't been able to solve. He is very well educated and one of those typical types that lives simply and only has a vague understanding of money. He really doesn't spend a lot of his earnings, lives with his parents, and doesn't really have any major overheads apart from when he builds himself a new PC or whatnot. He told us one day that he has around 600,000 pounds in the bank just through unspent earnings like it was nothing. He had no idea he could buy a whole house with just his savings, no idea what we were talking about. Well, as it turns out, he has recently been dating a Ukrainian girl over the internet. They've exchanged pictures, and she does look amazingly cute, almost too good looking. Without being a git, I would say in a perfect world, this girl is a touch out of his league. Well, he popped the question over Christmas to her, and she said yes. They have never met physically, as far as I can understand, not even video called. We are wondering if this is a girl looking to be able to emigrate here via marriage, or if this is some sort of scam run by some bloke or blokes who have other ideas. Why did he mention he had 600,000 pounds to us? Well, glad you asked. It was 650,000 pounds. Yep, in the last 6 months while they have been dating, he sent her 50,000 pounds or so over the various expenses and other things she's had to get through. And he's about to wire her 10,000 pounds to pay for a wedding dress and flights over. Now, don't get me wrong, if this is a girl trapped in a war-torn country, she's likely trying to get out alive, and, well, I'm sure most people would do anything they can when faced with the horribleness that's going on in the Ukraine country. That's about as politically as I would comment on it, but given he has only gotten pictures, apparently some of them a little risque, some of them look really well staged. None of these things look like they were taken on a mobile phone. Unless, of course, this girl has access to a photo studio and can edit photos like a boss. Who knows? But there were also certain things that made me wonder, too. Whenever he would talk about his nerdy stuff, mainly board and card games, she made out like she understood, but to me it didn't seem to be more than something you could look up online and fake knowledge on. Well, look, you know and I know that there is some sort of scam afoot. He's off today to start making arrangements at a registry office to be married. I have no idea where this will end up. We have told him our concerns, he's taken them on board, but seems hell-bent on proceeding. What can you do? One of the smartest guys I know, and I think he's getting duped properly and royally. I don't know the parents to ask their thoughts on it, so that's not an avenue. And to admit, I am his boss. Legally, there is only so much I can say before I get myself in hot water too from an HR point of view. Now, one thing I know that makes a lot of people do things that are not thought of 100% of the time: love. Yep, love. You can be frickin' Einstein, but when you fall in love, it's like all intelligence is out the door. Story 11. I worked the night shift maintaining full-size military flight simulators. Absolutely bleeding-edge technology. Night shift did all the maintenance, and you had to be sharp as a tack to get assigned there. Buddy was a senior tech transferred in with glowing reviews, scored near perfect on all tests, top student, smart AF. He was put on a swing shift where he could do routine maintenance and learn the system. Another tech and I spent 2 weeks, all night, calibrating and aligning all 6 of these Century Data Model 232 pizza oven removable hard drives, and for the first time since knew all 6 could read any disk in the inventory. Before, certain disks only worked in certain drives because the whole system was FM, effing magic. The next couple of day shifts were glorious. Training hops that couldn't be run because the disks weren't readable could now be offered. Pilots flew all sorts of interesting missions over foreign soil. Great training. 3 evenings later, Buddy pulled a routine preventive maintenance card, check all power supplies for proper output. Very simple. Every machine had a few test points, put a multimeter on them, and made sure they were all within specs. Note that the card specifically said, quote, "Write a maintenance request for any observed deficiencies." Buddy decided he'd do it one better. He adjusted every power supply to its nominal value. If it was supposed to be 15 VDC plus or minus 0.75 VDC and it was measured at 14.6 VDC, Buddy adjusted it to 15 VDC exactly. There were dozens and dozens of power supplies, and although it was a digital system, too much of it relied on these analog inputs. I cannot begin to tell you how badly this broke the entire system, and it took days to figure out why everything broke all at once. The lack of simulator time affected the tempo of actual flight ops. 2 or 3 of the required flights for pilot certifications were usually done on the simulator, and several more Bombardier Navigator flights as well. It was a mad scramble and had implications far beyond expectations. Deployments were extended or delayed, fuel stores were used up, aircraft maintenance suffered, and flag rank visits occurred. Never a good thing. Buddy was put on permanent tech library duty. Story 12. This'll get buried, but what the hell? Worked in labs with too many people who had honors and master's degrees in chemistry yet were as much use as a chocolate watch and/or had zero common sense. One memorable one about 20 years ago was a person who got confused between PSI and bar G on a pressure scale, introduced a xylene toluene mixture with 10 bar of nitrogen into a pre-evacuated 4,000 cc oil testing cell with explosive results, destroying close to about 100,000 pounds of equipment. Now, the procedure for cleaning the testing cell was first to empty it of any residual oil, then flush it with the above solvent mixture, then empty at normal atmospheric pressures, then seal up and fully evacuate the cell, gently introduce about 100 cc of solvent with no more than 5 psi of pressure behind it. There was actually a dot we had engraved on the glass of the pressure dial that showed the limit. The vapors would take care of the residual oil, then gently bring it back up to atmospheric and drain, then do a final rinse with clean solvent. Easy. For some reason, the person decided to put in what they thought was 10 psi, not great for the seals, but got confused and put 10 bar in instead, which IIRC is 14 times as much pressure, i.e. 140 psi, massive explosion, no bit of the cell was found bigger than a penny. The big water-heated gas collector was irreparably holed, all the sensors above it were broken. Vacuum pump was history, and even the water bath for the collector took shrapnel. Took a week to clear up after the insurance guys came. Technician had not a mark on them, but was white as a sheet and gibbering in tongues after the incident. Thank God for the thick, robust polycarbonate safety cage around the pressurized systems, which extended up to the gas collector. It was designed so any explosive would be directed upwards, not outwards. Or I'd have been cleaning up not just bits of glass and metal, but pieces of lab technician too. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you made it this far, I'm pretty sure you're also going to enjoy this one. What was nice until idiots ruined it? Story 1, the very first story, was unbelievable. I'll see you in that video, and thank you for watching this one.